The Stoics believed uncertainty appears when a man stops reacting and starts choosing. If you've gone silent and now feel unsure, it's not because you're lost, it's because you're no longer acting on impulse. You've stepped into stillness, and stillness removes distractions. It exposes what you were avoiding, what you were tolerating, and what no longer aligns with who you're becoming. In this video, I'll explain why silence creates doubt before it creates clarity, and why this uncomfortable phase is actually a sign of growth, not failure. If this speaks to where you are right now, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Number 1. Why you went quiet. If you've gone silent and now you're sitting there wondering whether you made the right move, I want you to pause and really listen to this, because your silence didn't come out of nowhere. Men don't pull back on impulse. They don't wake up one morning and randomly decide to disappear. A man goes quiet when something inside him reaches a quiet breaking point. Not a dramatic moment, not an argument, but a slow realization that keeps building beneath the surface. A realization that he's been giving more than he's receiving, that he's been explaining himself to someone who isn't truly listening, that he's been trying to hold together a connection that keeps slipping through his hands, no matter how much effort he puts in. Most men don't stop talking because they stop caring. They stop talking because caring has started to cost them their peace. You feel it in your body before you ever understand it in words. That hesitation before sending another message, that tight feeling in your chest when you imagine restarting the same conversation again, the fatigue that shows up not in your muscles, but in your mind. Silence, in moments like this, is often your nervous system asking for rest, and your self-respect asking for space. You didn't choose silence as a strategy. Silence chose you as a form of self-preservation, and that's why uncertainty follows it. When you were constantly reaching out, explaining, checking, and reacting, you felt busy. You felt like you were doing something, like you were at least trying to steer the outcome. The moment you went quiet, that illusion of control disappeared. Now there's no feedback, no reassurance, no immediate response to tell you whether you're moving in the right direction. And the mind hates that. The mind equates uncertainty with danger, so it starts questioning you. It asks if you made a mistake. It wonders if you should fix things by breaking the silence. But uncertainty here isn't a warning sign. It's a withdrawal symptom from a pattern you've been stuck in. From a Stoic perspective, this moment is deeply important. The Stoics believed that the first act of strength is recognizing what controls you. If your emotions rise and fall based on whether someone replies, whether they show interest, or whether they validate you, then you're not free, you're reactive. Stepping back is how a man regains authorship over his inner state. Silence isn't passive, it's active restraint. It's you choosing not to let impulse, fear, or anxiety dictate your next move. Right now, you may feel exposed. Without constant communication, you're left alone with your thoughts. And that can feel uncomfortable. But this discomfort is not punishment, it's recalibration. You're learning what it feels like to exist without chasing reassurance. You're learning that your worth doesn't need to be negotiated in real time. The Stoics called this returning to yourself. And if you're feeling unsure, that's not a sign you're weak. It's a sign you've stepped out of automatic behavior and into awareness. Silence marks the moment where reaction ends and self-command quietly begins. Number 2. Why you feel unsure now. The reason you feel unsure right now isn't because going silent was a mistake. It's because, for the first time in a long while, you're no longer operating on impulse. Before the silence, your actions gave you a sense of movement. You were texting, checking your phone, rereading conversations, trying to fix the emotional distance, trying to say the right thing at the right time. Even when those actions weren't working, they gave your mind something to hold on to. They created the illusion of direction. As long as you were doing something, it felt like you were still in control. Now that you've stopped, that illusion is gone. There's no immediate feedback anymore, no response to analyze, no signal to interpret. And the mind doesn't like empty space. It wants proof. It wants certainty. It wants reassurance that you're moving forward instead of standing still. When it doesn't get that, it panics. That panic shows up as doubt, as second-guessing, as the urge to break silence just to feel grounded again. But what you're experiencing isn't confusion, it's withdrawal from a pattern that once kept you emotionally busy. Think about it honestly. When you were constantly reacting, did you actually feel calm? Or did you just feel occupied? A lot of men mistake activity for progress. As long as there's motion, they assume something is happening. Silence removes that distraction. And without distraction, you're left facing the raw truth of the situation and yourself. That's why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable. It's not because silence failed. It's because your old habits no longer apply, and your new standards haven't fully settled yet. From a Stoic perspective, this gap is critical. The Stoics understood that growth doesn't feel like confidence at first. It feels like instability. When you stop responding automatically, your nervous system has to relearn balance. You're no longer chasing relief through action. You're learning to tolerate not knowing. And that skill, being able to sit with uncertainty without collapsing into reaction, is rare strength. Most people never develop it. They rush to fill the silence because they can't stand the discomfort of not controlling the outcome. But uncertainty here is not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're no longer numbing yourself with constant engagement. You've stepped into a space where your actions are no longer driven by fear of loss, fear of being forgotten, or fear of silence itself. The Stoics didn't teach men to avoid discomfort, they taught them to understand it. Discomfort isn't always danger. Sometimes it's evidence that an old pattern is breaking down. Right now, you're between versions of yourself. The version that reacted automatically hasn't fully let go yet. The version that moves with clarity and restraint is still forming. That in-between state feels unstable by nature. But it's also where transformation happens. If you can resist the urge to do something just to escape the feeling, you allow new standards to take root. And when those standards settle, uncertainty fades, not because someone else reassures you, but because you no longer need reassurance to stay steady. If any part of this hit close to home, that's not coincidence, it means you're paying attention. This is one of those moments where awareness matters more than answers. If this perspective resonates, take a moment to like the video so it reaches more men who need to hear it. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment sharing what this silence has been teaching you, or simply type, "I choose steadiness over impulse." That small act of acknowledgement matters more than you think. Now let's take this understanding and carry it into what comes next. Number 3. Silence isn't empty. A lot of men think silence is empty. That once you stop reaching out, you're losing time, losing momentum, losing her attention. Silence can feel like standing still, while everything else keeps moving. And because most men were taught that effort equals value, doing nothing feels risky. It feels like you're letting go instead of fighting. But silence isn't emptiness. It's the removal of noise that's been clouding your judgment. Before you went quiet, your mind was probably overloaded. Thinking, checking, replaying conversations, reading into pauses. Every interaction kept you emotionally engaged, but also emotionally tense. When you stop forcing contact, you stop feeding that cycle. The constant stimulation fades, your thoughts slow down. Your body finally gets a chance to relax. And in that quiet, you start noticing things you couldn't see before, not because you weren't smart enough, but because you were too involved. Silence creates space. Space to see patterns instead of moments. Space to recognize how much effort you were putting in and how little peace you were getting back. You begin to notice whether connection was mutual or maintained by your energy alone. That awareness doesn't come while you're constantly reacting. It only shows up when you step back. The Stoics valued this kind of stillness. They practiced it deliberately because they understood that a man who can't tolerate quiet will always be driven by impulse. Silence trains restraint. It teaches you how to sit with discomfort without immediately reaching for distraction or reassurance. That ability is not weakness, it's stability forming. What you're experiencing now isn't nothing. It's recovery. Recovery from emotional overextension. Recovery from living in a state of constant response. Silence gives your nervous system time to reset and your sense of self time to come back online. And once that happens, you realize something important. Silence didn't take anything from you. It gave you clarity, balance, and the first real sense of grounding you've had in a long time. Number 4. Life without reactions. When you go silent, one of the first things you notice is the absence of feedback. No replies to analyze, no signs to interpret, no small signals to tell you how you're doing or where you stand. At first, that can feel unsettling, almost like walking without a map. You are used to measuring your emotional state through someone else's responses. A message from them could lift your mood. Silence from them could sink it. Without that constant input, it can feel like something essential is missing. But what's really happening is this. You're meeting yourself again without a mirror. You start noticing how much of your emotional stability depended on external validation. How often your confidence rose or fell based on whether someone reached out, showed interest, or pulled away. That realization can sting. It forces you to see how reactive you were, not weak, but conditioned. Conditioned to look outward for reassurance instead of inward for steadiness. Living without reactions exposes this pattern clearly. You notice urges more sharply now, the impulse to check your phone, the desire to do something just to feel grounded again. And in that space, you're faced with a choice you didn't have before. React automatically, or sit with the discomfort and let it pass. Most people never learn this skill. They rush to fill the silence because they confuse calm with emptiness. Stoicism was built around this exact moment. It was never about becoming cold or emotionally shut down. It was about freedom. Freedom from being controlled by events, people, or outcomes outside your influence. A Stoic man doesn't eliminate emotion. He stops letting emotion dictate his actions. He understands that if his peace requires constant cooperation from the world, then his peace is fragile. Right now, without reactions, you're learning what truly belongs to you, your thoughts, your breathing, your values, your ability to remain steady even when nothing confirms you're doing the right thing. That's real power, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. The absence of feedback isn't a loss, it's training. Training your nervous system to regulate itself instead of outsourcing stability to someone else's attention. And the more you stay in this space, the more you realize that freedom doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from no longer being controlled by them. Number 5. Letting go feels uncomfortable. Letting go of control almost always feels uncomfortable in the beginning. And that discomfort is exactly why so many people avoid it. Control feels safe. It gives the mind something to hold on to. When you try to predict outcomes, replay conversations, or plan what to say next, your brain is doing what it thinks will keep you protected. It's telling you, if I can understand this, if I can manage it, I won't get hurt. That's why the urge to send one more message feels so strong. Not because you have something new to say, but because part of you wants relief from uncertainty. That urge for closure isn't weakness. It's a coping mechanism. The mind craves resolution because open-ended situations feel threatening. Silence removes the illusion that you can manage the outcome through effort. And without that illusion, restlessness appears. You feel it in your body, a sense of agitation, the impulse to act just to make the feeling stop. But acting from that place rarely brings peace. It only resets the cycle. Peace doesn't come from controlling what someone else thinks, feels, or does. It comes from regulating yourself when you don't get answers. That distinction is central to Stoicism. The Stoics were clear about what a man can control and what he can't. Outcomes, other people's emotions. Timing, these are not yours to command. Your reactions, your discipline, your restraint, those are. Letting go of control is not about giving up. It's about redirecting effort away from what drains you and toward what stabilizes you. That's why this phase feels so uneasy. You're breaking the habit of emotional micromanagement. You're learning to sit with unanswered questions without rushing to resolve them. That takes strength most people never develop. Stoicism doesn't promise certainty or comfort. It trains steadiness in the absence of both. A steady man doesn't need immediate clarity to remain grounded. He doesn't need reassurance to maintain self-respect. If you feel restless right now, that's not a sign you should break silence. It's a sign that your nervous system is adjusting to a new way of being. You're learning how it feels to stand without leaning on someone else's response for balance. That learning curve is uncomfortable, but it's also where independence is formed. And once you realize you can survive uncertainty without chasing control, you gain something far more valuable than closure. You gain self-command. Before moving on, take a moment to sit with what you just heard. Ask yourself where you've been trying to control outcomes just to escape discomfort, and what it would feel like to stop doing that. This phase isn't asking you to act, it's asking you to notice. If something here resonated with you, leave a comment and share what you're learning about yourself in this silence. Sometimes clarity begins the moment you put it into words. Number 6. Seeing things clearly. Silence has a way of exposing reality in a way constant interaction never can. When you're always engaged, texting, explaining, responding, adjusting, you're too close to the situation to see it clearly. Everything blends together. Moments feel important, but patterns stay hidden. Silence creates distance, and with distance comes perspective. Without the noise of constant contact, behavior becomes easier to read. You're no longer judging the situation by words or promises, but by consistency. This is often when uncomfortable truths start surfacing. You begin to notice who makes an effort without being chased, and who only appears when it's easy or convenient for them. You see whether interest was steady or dependent on your attention. And slowly, a harder realization may emerge. Whether the respect you thought was there was genuine, or whether you were simply being tolerated as long as you kept giving, adjusting, and accommodating. That clarity can sting, especially if you've invested emotionally. It can feel like loss, even though nothing new actually happened. You're just seeing what was already there. This is why many people avoid silence, not because it's empty, but because it's honest. Silence doesn't soften reality. It doesn't distract you from it. And at first, that honesty can hurt. Your mind may want to reinterpret things, to give the benefit of the doubt, to break silence just to restore a more comfortable story. But comfort is not the same as truth. Comfort can keep you stuck. Truth sets you free, even when it's painful. Stoicism places truth above emotional ease. The Stoics believed that clarity, no matter how uncomfortable, was always preferable to illusion. They didn't see clear perception as cruelty toward others, but as responsibility toward oneself. Seeing things clearly doesn't mean you become bitter or cold. It means you stop lying to yourself. It means you stop confusing effort with connection and hope with evidence. If clarity feels heavy right now, that's normal. You're not losing something, you're shedding an illusion. And illusions often leave behind grief before they leave behind peace. But this kind of clarity is an act of self-respect. It's you choosing not to build your life on assumptions or potential, but on reality. Silence didn't create this truth. It simply removed the distractions that kept you from seeing it. And in that sense, seeing clearly isn't punishment, it's mercy. Number 7. Doing less emotionally. One reason silence can feel so confusing is because you're doing less emotional labor than you're used to. For a long time, you may have been the one fixing things, smoothing over tension, reassuring, explaining, or trying to hold the emotional weight of the connection together. You were constantly adjusting yourself to keep things from falling apart. And when that becomes your role, effort starts to feel like love. Doing more feels responsible. Doing less feels wrong. So when you stop, it can feel like you're failing, like you're being passive, like you're abandoning something important. Especially if you've always been the one who cared more, gave more, or tried harder, silence can trigger guilt. Your mind tells you that you should be doing something, that you should be reaching out, checking in, repairing, proving that you're still invested. But what you're really stepping away from isn't connection, it's imbalance. Doing less emotionally doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you stopped carrying what was never meant to be carried alone. You're no longer managing someone else's feelings or taking responsibility for how the situation unfolds. And that can feel unfamiliar because fairness often feels like absence when you've been overgiving. What feels like nothing is actually equilibrium starting to return. Stoic discipline often looks like restraint, not action. The Stoics understood that not every impulse deserves a response, and not every emotional pull should be followed. Strength, to them, wasn't about constant effort. It was about knowing when to stop pouring energy into something that depletes you. Sometimes the most disciplined move is to withdraw your attention, not in anger, but in self-respect. Right now, you're learning how to exist without overfunctioning. You're allowing space where you used to compensate. And that space feels strange because it exposes how much you were doing behind the scenes. Silence removes your emotional labor from the equation and reveals what remains without it. If things fall apart without your constant effort, that tells you something important. Doing less emotionally is not neglect. It's recalibration. It's you deciding that connection should not require self-erasure. And while it may feel uncomfortable now, this restraint is what allows your energy to recover. You're not withdrawing because you're weak. You're stepping back because you're learning that your strength doesn't come from constant giving. It comes from knowing when to stop reaching for what drains you. Number 8. When calm feels strange. When calm starts to show up, it can feel strangely uncomfortable. If your nervous system has been trained on chaos, on emotional highs and lows, uncertainty, tension, and constant stimulation, peace doesn't register as safety right away. It registers as absence. Your body is so used to bracing itself, anticipating the next message, the next shift in tone, the next emotional swing, that when things finally quiet down, it doesn't know how to interpret it. Calm feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often feels wrong. That's why peace can feel empty at first. Not because something is missing, but because something unhealthy is no longer present. The adrenaline, the anxiety, the emotional spikes, they can become addictive without you realizing it. When your system is used to operating in survival mode, stability feels dull, silence feels flat. And your mind may start searching for stimulation again, not because you need it, but because it's what you've been conditioned to expect. This is where many men misinterpret what's happening. They assume calm means loss of connection, loss of passion, or loss of purpose. But what you're actually experiencing is adjustment. Your nervous system is recalibrating after being overstimulated for too long. It's learning a new baseline. And just like sore muscles after training, that adjustment phase can feel awkward and uncomfortable before it feels strong. Stoicism understood this well. The Stoics didn't chase emotional highs. They valued steadiness. To them, calm wasn't weakness or indifference. It was quiet power. A calm man isn't numb. He's grounded. He's no longer pulled around by emotional extremes. He responds instead of reacts. And that kind of inner balance takes time to trust, especially if chaos once felt like normal. Right now, the temptation may be to reintroduce noise, just to feel something familiar again, to break silence, to stir the waters. But calm doesn't ask you to rush. It asks you to stay, to let your system learn that safety doesn't require drama, that peace doesn't need to be earned through struggle. If calm feels strange, that's not a sign you're disconnected. It's a sign you're healing. Give yourself time to adjust to this quieter strength. The more you stay with it, the more you'll realize that calm isn't empty at all. It's stable. And stability is what allows real confidence and clarity to grow. Take a moment to sit with what this calm is bringing up in you. Not to analyze it away, not to rush past it, but to simply notice how your body and mind are responding to the quiet. Ask yourself where you learned to equate intensity with connection, or tension with meaning, and what it feels like to stand in something steadier now. This kind of reflection is where awareness turns into real strength. If this speaks to you, leave a comment and share what this phase feels like in your own words, or, if it feels easier, just type, "Calm is not empty, it's strength" below. Sometimes acknowledging the shift is how trust begins. Number 9. Choosing respect over explaining. At some point, you stop trying to explain yourself. Not because you ran out of words, and not because you stopped caring, but because you noticed something important. The words weren't landing. You could say things clearly, calmly, even thoughtfully, and still feel misunderstood, or worse, ignored. When that happens often enough, something shifts inside you. You realize that continuing to explain isn't connection anymore, it's self-abandonment. Most men don't go quiet out of spite. They go quiet after realizing that being understood requires a listener, not better phrasing. You start to see that no matter how carefully you choose your words, the outcome doesn't change. The same misunderstandings repeat. The same emotional distance remains. And that's when silence becomes less about withdrawal and more about self-respect. You stop talking not to punish, but to protect your dignity. Silence in this context isn't cold, it's clear. It's you recognizing that your value doesn't increase the more you justify yourself. There's a point where explaining turns into pleading, and clarity turns into negotiation. When you sense that line has been crossed, choosing silence is choosing yourself. It's saying, "I won't keep performing for understanding that isn't being offered." Stoicism aligns deeply with this choice. The Stoics believed that not every situation deserves your emotional energy or your voice. They taught that wisdom includes knowing when to speak and when not to. Silence, to them, wasn't avoidance. It was restraint guided by self-respect. A Stoic man doesn't argue with indifference or chase validation from someone unwilling to meet him halfway. He preserves his energy for what is worthy of it. This is why silence can feel heavy at first. You may worry about being misunderstood. You may fear that your intentions won't be seen. But part of maturity is accepting that being understood by everyone is not a requirement for living with integrity. Your self-respect doesn't depend on someone else's interpretation. By choosing respect over explaining, you're setting a boundary without raising your voice. You're stepping out of a dynamic where your worth had to be proven through words. And while that choice may feel lonely at times, it restores something far more important than validation. It restores alignment with yourself. Number 10. Learning to self-steady. Silence has a way of removing your emotional crutches. When reassurance is no longer available, when there's no message to calm your nerves or response to tell you everything is okay, you're left with yourself. And at first, that can feel destabilizing. You notice urges more clearly now, the urge to reach out, to check, to do something, just to ease the discomfort. Without silence, those urges were quickly acted on. With silence, they have nowhere to go. This is where self-steadying begins. You start learning how to sit with emotion instead of reacting to it. You breathe through restlessness instead of chasing relief. You let waves of doubt, sadness, or anxiety rise and fall without immediately turning them into action. That's not suppression, it's regulation. You're teaching your nervous system that emotions are temporary signals, not commands that must be obeyed. Most people never develop this skill. They outsource emotional stability to others. They rely on attention, reassurance, or constant interaction to feel grounded. Silence interrupts that pattern. It forces emotional self-reliance. And while that can feel uncomfortable at first, it's also where real strength is built. The ability to remain steady without external validation is rare because it requires patience, restraint, and trust in oneself. The Stoics called this inner sovereignty. To them, sovereignty meant ruling yourself before trying to influence the world. A man with inner sovereignty doesn't need circumstances to be perfect to remain centered. He doesn't need certainty to remain calm. He understands that while he cannot control outcomes, he can govern his responses. That self-command becomes his anchor when everything else feels unstable. Right now, you may feel like you're doing nothing, but internally, you're doing something profound. You're building the muscle of restraint. Each time you resist an urge and let it pass, you strengthen your ability to stay grounded under pressure. Over time, this changes you. You become less reactive, less dependent, more composed. Learning to self-steady doesn't happen overnight. It's formed through repetition in moments of uncertainty like this one. And the more you practice it, the more you realize that steadiness doesn't come from controlling the situation. It comes from mastering yourself. Silence isn't just absence. It's training for inner sovereignty. Number 11. A new line is forming. Somewhere inside this silence, something subtle but important is happening. A new line is forming within you. Not a loud declaration, not a dramatic promise, but a quiet boundary you can feel more than you can explain. It's the moment you realize, I won't abandon myself anymore. The moment you decide that your peace, your dignity, and your self-respect are no longer negotiable. This line doesn't come from anger or bitterness. It comes from clarity earned through stillness. Before, you may have crossed your own boundaries without noticing. You stayed in conversations that drained you. You chased understanding where there was none. You tolerated uncertainty and imbalance because part of you hoped effort would eventually be enough. Silence exposes those patterns. And in that exposure, a shift occurs. You begin to recognize where you've been compromising yourself just to maintain connection. That realization is uncomfortable, but it's also freeing. This is why this phase feels so strange. You're not just waiting, you're changing. Old reflexes are losing their grip. The urge to chase, to explain, to overgive no longer feels as natural as it once did. And when an old identity starts dissolving, discomfort follows. The mind resists change, even when the change is healthy. It tries to pull you back to what's familiar, even if what's familiar was hurting you. Stoicism never promised comfort. It promised alignment. Alignment between your actions and your values, between how you treat yourself and how you expect to be treated. The Stoics understood that growth often begins with friction. Discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's often a sign that something false is falling away, that you're no longer living in contradiction with yourself. This new line you're forming isn't about becoming rigid or closed off. It's about becoming anchored. It's you deciding that you won't chase what disrespects you, and you won't sacrifice your inner balance just to keep something alive. That decision doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need validation. It simply needs to be honored. And once that line is drawn, something changes permanently. You move differently. You speak less, but with more intention. You react less, but with more clarity. Silence is no longer confusion, it's confirmation. You're no longer trying to return to who you were before. You're stepping into alignment with who you're becoming. Let this settle for a second, instead of rushing ahead. Notice what this new line brings up in you, not as a concept, but as a feeling. Where have you been giving more than you had to give? Where have you ignored your own discomfort just to keep something going? You don't need to judge those moments or fix them right now. Just acknowledge them. Awareness is already movement, and as you hold that awareness, pay attention to how your body responds when you imagine honoring that boundary instead of crossing it again. That quiet recognition is part of the transformation taking place. Number 12. This phase has a purpose. If you've gone silent and feel unsure, understand this first. You are not lost. What you're experiencing right now is not confusion, it's transition. And transitions never feel stable while you're inside them. Silence is not a pause in your growth. It's the environment where growth actually happens. It's the space where old versions of you quietly fall away and new standards begin to take shape, often without you realizing it in the moment. In silence, you're no longer performing the role you once played. You're not reacting, chasing, or explaining. You're no longer measuring your worth by how someone responds to you. That absence of external validation can feel unsettling, but it's also what allows you to reconnect with yourself. You start to see what matters when no one is watching. You start to feel what's solid inside you when nothing is being confirmed from the outside. Whether she reaches out again or never does is no longer the point. This phase isn't about predicting outcomes, it's about shaping character. If she returns, you'll meet that moment with clearer boundaries and deeper self-respect. If she doesn't, you won't collapse the way you once might have. Either way, this period is strengthening you in ways constant engagement never could. Silence removes distractions so that the lesson can land. The Stoics believed that life doesn't test men to break them, but to reveal them. Pressure exposes what's real. And right now, the pressure of uncertainty is showing you something important. You're capable of standing on your own. You're capable of regulating your emotions without chasing reassurance. You're capable of choosing dignity over impulse. These are not small changes. They are foundational. This phase may not feel productive, but it's deeply constructive. You're learning patience. You're learning restraint. You're learning how to remain steady without control. Those skills don't announce themselves loudly, but they stay with you for life. And one day, you'll look back and realize that silence didn't stall you. It shaped you. So, if you're questioning yourself right now, let that question soften. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're being formed. And the strength emerging from this quiet season is something no one can take from you because it wasn't given by anyone else. It was built by you, in the stillness, when you chose not to run back to what no longer served you. As you come to the end of this, I want you to remember something important. The uncertainty you've been sitting with isn't a flaw in your decision. It's evidence that you're no longer living on autopilot. Silence didn't take your power away. It stripped everything down so you could see where your strength actually comes from. You didn't go quiet because you were weak or afraid. You went quiet because something inside you demanded alignment, dignity, and peace. And even if this phase feels uncomfortable, unclear, or lonely at times, it's shaping a version of you that doesn't need constant reassurance to stand steady. That's not loss. That's growth taking root. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to like it. It helps this message reach more men who need it. Leave a comment below and share what part of this silence you're navigating right now. And when you're ready, watch the recommended videos on screen to continue this journey of clarity, self-command, and quiet strength.